There's no my logic or your logic. There's just logic.
Ooh, this one looks really fun. Oh wait, it's gonna be another video on atheism. What good could possibly come of that?
Nothing if you're a deluded religious moron. I think we see where this is going.
Calvinist, I welcome the rather systematic use of first principles. But then you listen to the explanations and then you realize that Shane is a slave to the overly simplistic nature of militant atheism.
In other words, you think it's fine up until the point it goes against something you like. How many times have we seen that? And what is militant atheism anyway? When was the last time Richard Dawkins shot up a church? How many people did Christopher Hitchens bomb? You're showing pictures of these guys and saying they're militant. But what did they do other than destroy your pathetic Bronze Age fairy tale?
Insisting on the correct view of reality and redefining language to one's own esoteric notions.
No, we're trying to specify what the words actually mean and not let religious idiots keep changing the definition to avoid whatever debunking they've just been handed. Oh, and nice genetic fallacy there. Nice to see the guilt by association is alive and well in the mind of the fundy.
As a Christian, the existence of God, or for the sake of this argument, the belief in God, is my first principle.
That's not a principle, you moron! That's a statement about reality. You don't get to begin by just assuming your conclusion is a first principle. Anytime you make a claim about reality and axiom, you're gone. Because what happens when you run into contrary evidence? You have to explain it away, just like you're doing here. And you have to deny all of the logic behind it, to the point where you're denying the experimental method itself and even the real first principles of logic, consistency and non-contradiction. Those are not claims about reality. They're what is necessary to have any sort of idea of what's really going on.
It is the foundational assumption by which I examine and understand all of reality.
Yes, and you're gonna see everything through that filter. A distorting filter that causes you to deny the reality of anything that filter doesn't want you to see. It's like if you wear sunglasses that block out all blue light and then deny the very existence of blue light. The light is still there. Your sunglasses do not change that reality. And the first time you run into a situation where it's important that something is blue, you're gonna have problems.
And by your own definition of what first principles are, I don't need to fulfill the burden of proof.
That's not how it works. You don't get to just make up any old crap and call it a first principle.
You can't just start off with the law of non-contradiction, because in order to make the point that
something cannot be A and not A at the same time,
you need to have an A to bring into examination.
Oh, give me a break! Do you people see what I mean about how this religious nutbar has to deny logic, reason, and reality itself to maintain his delusion? You need the principle before you can have an A to examine. Otherwise, how are you going to know how to observe A to begin with? All we're saying here is that contradictory statements cannot both be true in the same sense at the same time. That's the basic law of non-contradiction as stated by classical logic. A cannot be not A. A cannot be B and not B at the same time. We do not need an actual A or B at this point. We're merely stating the principle.
For example, I think you would agree with me that the first principle of libertarianism would be the non-aggression principle.
So you didn't even watch the video. Big surprise. The NAP is not the first principle. It is derived from first principles by an unbroken chain of logic. The video makes that clear. What is it with anti-science religious nutjobs that they'll just start tearing into a video without even watching it first? Isn't that a huge indication that they're not looking to further the conversation, but they need to take down something they see as a threat? And if they really were so confident about their beliefs, why would they feel so threatened in the first place?
However, if you also hold to the idea that you are part of a nation-state and that you need an enforced border to protect it, you might also believe that taxation is needed to fund that enforcement.
Well, since libertarians don't believe in either of those things, we're good.
But since taxation by its very nature is a clear violation of the non-aggression principle, you are now holding to a logical contradiction and must make a choice.
Nope. no contradiction, you're misattributing policies that libertarians do not hold. Did you even read the LP platform? It's been for open immigration since day one, and I have several videos advocating it too.
You need to either adjust your notion of a national border, or you need to adjust your first principle. This is actually part of how I transitioned from being a purist libertarian to being a nationalist.
What, so you could be more contradictory? The way out of the contradiction is to realize that borders are just imaginary lines drawn on a map by politicians, usually as the result of a war. Why do you think the border with Mexico is the Rio Grande, for example? It's because a war was resolved one way. If it had been resolved the other way, it would have been the Nueces. And that is the only reason why.
And just to add, I did this while having Christ as my first principle.
So having Christ as your first principle led you to want to take money from peaceful people by force in order to point guns at other peaceful people just because they're crossing an imaginary line? Well, thanks for giving us another reason to reject your primitive, barbaric beliefs.
Saying that atheism is about a lack of belief in God is like saying Christianity is about a lack of belief in atheism.
What?
It's technically true, it just doesn't mean anything.
You are making a claim about reality, that God exists, and also all the Christ and Bible stuff, but we'll just stick to the first one. Now, again, if you'd bothered to watch the video, you would have seen me make the point that there are an infinite number of things that might exist, but only a finite number of things that actually do exist. And so right off the bat, the null hypothesis has a much larger prior probability over any claim of existence you might come up with. That's why the burden of proof is on you. What would a lack of belief in atheism even mean? You're making positive claims about reality. The atheist isn't.
People are defined by what they do believe in, not what they don't believe in.
So what? What does that have to do with there being no evidence whatsoever for your imaginary friend?
And when you state what you do believe in, you need definitions and terms that actually relate to people who don't think exactly the same way you do.
These are logical principles. They should inform thought. They should not be based on opinions.
For crying out loud, I reject the God hypothesis.
No, you do not! You're claiming that God exists! You're even saying you have it as a first principle!
Why? It's a dismissive concept invented by naturalists. It fails to correspond to any existing notion of God, much less the Christian God.
Oh, for crying out loud, do you even know what a hypothesis is? This is a claim that you have not proven, and you have to prove that claim before you can move on and claim that the God that exists is the Christian one, as opposed to any of the thousands of others that people have believed in throughout history, or even any of the other possible gods that no one has had any concept of yet. The claim that God exists is a hypothesis, and it is one that you have not proven.
This insistence on holding to a passive negative philosophy makes you arrogant and condescending.
Wow, really? Why don't you look in the mirror, pal, and see how you've been behaving throughout this whole video? You've been making one logical error after another while arrogantly attempting to school me while making it clear that you haven't even watched the videos in question. How arrogant and condescending can you get?
Especially when every response to your collection of straw men...
Not a single one of those is a straw man! They are all, every single one of those, fallacies that we encounter over and over and over and over and over again. Amazing how you liars run away from your most central claims as soon as we point out how stupid they are.
If I said something to the effect of, oh, well, until you hold to a positive philosophy that fulfills the burden of proof, I don't have to listen to a word you have to say, would you take me seriously?
I'd take you a lot more seriously than I do now.
Although, it would be a good method to illustrate your intellectual hypocrisy. But you know where the burden of proof really doesn't matter? The voting booth.
Wow, an argumentum ad populum. Gotta love it.
And for someone who's pushing for a view that requires a change in political organization and perception,
I'm just trying to get people to justify what they believe in. It's a status quo fallacy to think that you should get a free pass on the burden of proof just because your side is already in power. And really, we libertarians aren't asking for that much. Just let people try something else if they want, and don't point guns at them to make them do things your way. Really, what is the big deal about that? It's certainly not anywhere near as much of a change as, say, a border wall or Obamacare or something like that. Why do the people who continually point guns at more and more peaceful people get a free pass while there must be something wrong with the rest of us?
I'm rather amazed that you don't realize how foolish you are being.
Yeah, not wanting to get things done through aggression against peaceful people. How foolish of me.
You don't order believers in big government to prove themselves to you.
Why not? Because they can't meet that burden and you know it?
You do what Milton Friedman did and point out to them that there is a better way.
I've been doing that as well, so thanks for ignoring all sorts of other videos I've made, like how to fix healthcare without spending a dime, for one example.
I find it adorable that you are using dictionary.com to define the prefix of A in atheism, while the very same site has definitions for atheism and theism that contradict your lack of belief assertions.
Did you not read your own screenshots there, Sunshine? Disbelief in the existence of a supreme being or beings, whereas theism is the belief in the existence of a god or gods. While there is one definition of atheism as the doctrine of belief that there is no God, this is not one that any actual atheists adhere to. It's there because of morons like you who distort the language. I've challenged theists to point to one atheist who fits that definition, and they can't do it. Not Dawkins, not Hitchens, none of them. And you'd understand that if you'd actually read The God Delusion, or for that matter, anything else they've written. That's something else we see over and over again. Libertarians read tons of things written by statists, and atheists read tons of things written by the religious. We listen to their radio shows and we watch their videos so that we can reason through what they say, and we find it very easy to counter all of this. There are tons of articles, podcasts, videos, and books that explain in great detail exactly what your propagandists are saying and why it is wrong. But people like you? Not only did you clearly not read The God Delusion or anything else written by an actual atheist, as I've pointed out, you didn't even bother to watch the very videos you're responding to here. For crying out loud, you didn't even realize that I'm an open borders guy, as is the Libertarian Party platform. You don't pay any attention to any of that content because it's not coming from your team, and everyone on your team mindlessly regurgitates the same propaganda. So every time we get into an argument, we already know what you're going to say as soon as we know which team you're on, which echo chamber you've been in. In fact, most of these are discussions we've already had 1,000 times before, which is why it just doesn't faze us when you laughably call them straw men. We know for a fact that they aren't, and so this is just another demonstration of your own dishonesty. We already have the response to your propaganda, and we already know that you're going to act irrationally when we respond. This is extraordinarily frustrating because we've actually put a great deal of effort into this, and these repetitive arguments are tiring, especially when they yield no results. Really, the only thing we're asking here, the only thing that those first principles really call for is consistency. If your system can't be applied universally, then it really doesn't make much sense. Why do you think so many religious and statist morons get caught going against the very values they preach? Priests get caught having sex with children. Socialists acquire vast amounts of wealth. Family values politicians get caught cheating on their wives or hiring gay prostitutes. Gun control advocates murder millions of people by drone strike. Their moral platforms are inconsistent. This makes them rather meaningless, and so there is no reason for them to adhere thereto.
What if in the same way those women aren't really feminists, you are not really an atheist? What if in fact you are a theist, but you haven't yet taken the time to articulate the God you worship?
Because I don't worship any God at all! I haven't found any reason to conclude that any sort of God even exists! Why is this so difficult for you to comprehend?
It's kinda like what the Apostle Paul said to the people of Athens. I see that in every way you are very religious.
Wow, you're gonna try and prove me wrong with your Jesus fanfic. Is anyone really going to be surprised when I don't find that at all convincing? As James Randi said, the big question is, why do people believe in such things even when proof can be offered that it can't be that way? Because they're unsinkable ducks. They don't just want it to be true, they need it to be true. Some of them truly, desperately need it to be true, and when you question their beliefs or try to prove them wrong, you're threatening them. So thanks, artistic layman, for proving this yet again. We need more Christians like you so that more people will become atheists. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, why not hit like and subscribe? And to make sure I can keep producing content, support this channel by becoming a patron. And check out all the other great content here, like this video selected especially for you.